Now, when you are going to work with bigger projects, okay, so you are not limited actually to work in a single project with a single application only. Okay, so it is possible that you are going to work with multiple applications, okay, in a single project. So uh, the challenge there now is how are you going to make those different applications talk with each other? Okay, or how are they going to interact with each other? For example, one application uses JavaScript, the other application uses PHP, Python, or maybe from a database, which is actually a separate application from the user app that you are creating. Okay, so there comes now, or here comes what we call as our API. Wait, okay. So an API, okay, this is now the technology that we are going to use, okay, to let different applications communicate with each other. Okay, so in this lesson, in this video, we are going to understand what is an API, how it works with JavaScript. Okay, because on our next video, we are going to have then uh, databases. How our JavaScript app is going to communicate with MySQL database, and there we are going to use an API. So that is why we are going to understand first what is an API before we are going to communicate with our database. Okay, so we are going to learn here in this video how to fetch, parse, and display data from our API. So first we are going to define what is an API. Now, API means Application Programming Interface. Okay? It is a formalized set of rules and protocols. Okay? So there are rules that allows different software systems to communicate with each other. Okay? So the main purpose actually of an API is to let different applications or different systems to communicate or share data with each other. It defines the rule here is it is going to define the rules for request and response uh, to be how it is going to be structured. Okay, so there will be some requests, there will be some responses, and what data formats to use. As I've said, it is possible that we are going to exchange data from one app or one application or system to another. Okay, so therefore, there must be some set of rules to be followed. For example, what data format are we going to use? In our example here, actually, I'm going to introduce to you JSON or JavaScript object notation, but we're going to have that later on. Okay? Then we have some technical components for our API. So we have the term here endpoint, a specific URL, take note URL that represents a resource or service. So from our application, if ever we're going to contact another app, so what we call there, what I said as the other app, that is now our endpoint. And how are we going to contact our endpoint? There are different methods, okay? The form methods that we are used with are HTML forms. It could be get, post, put, or delete, okay? Then we have this what we call as headers. Okay, so content type, authorization, and so on. We're going to have that later on. Then for the request body, it is the data sent with our request. Because, for example, we are going to save the data inputted by the user to our database. So therefore, we are going to send that data into our API. And that is now usually we are going to use a JSON string or a JSON format. Okay, then response body. So request from our app to the endpoint, then from the endpoint to our app, that is what we call as the response. And usually it is also in the form of JSON string or JSON format. Then we have the different status code for our HTTP code. So we have 200 meaning OK, 404 not found, 500 is internal server error, and so on. Right? So we are going to encounter any of these as we go along with our discussion on the API. Okay? So how APIs work? Okay, request response cycle, in which I have an image later on. So the client, our app, is going to send a request to the API endpoint or the API. Okay, then the API server receives the request, process it. So when you say process, meaning it is possible within itself, or it might call another application. For example, it is going to call a database or call another application and so on and interacts with database or services. Okay, this is the process that it said. Then out of the process, it is going to send back a response, okay, to the client with data for confirmation. Okay, so take note. These are the terms that you are going to meet. Okay, we are going to encounter as we are going to work along with the API. There is a request and there is a response. Okay, so here is now the representation for in a diagram. Okay, so for example, this is our app, and we are using here a JavaScript. It is going to send a request into our API. And by the way, I'm going to introduce to you another language in our API. By the way, we are not limited only actually with PHP, but also we could also use Python, JS, C Sharp, or other different languages. But in our case, we're just going to use PHP. Okay, so there will be a process that is going to happen here. So whatever process is that, then there will be a response. Okay, and that response then could be displayed or processed and displayed within our client. Okay, or for example, we are going to have a request for a record from the database. So our app cannot directly work with our database, but it is going to pass through an API that is actually located. And by the way, our JavaScript is located in our browser client. Okay? And the API and the database are both located into our server. So therefore, the API can directly, in PHP, can directly communicate with our database. So therefore, our app is going to request or communicate with the API, PHP, and the API is going to work with the database, and the database is going to process that record or that request. Then still it is going to give a response in the form of a result set or a record set. Then that response from the database will then be relayed back into our application. Okay, so that's how the request response works. Okay, I'm just going to finish all of this before we're going to have our example. Okay, so what is JSON? Now, going back, it is said in our definition here, what data format to use. Okay, the latest or the newest one, we have the XML before, we have the text, XML, CSV, and so on. So we have here now our JSON. Okay, so this is the data format that we are going to use. It stands for JavaScript Object Notation, JSON. It is a lightweight, text-based format, okay? Used to store and exchange structured data between systems, especially between a client, when I say client, the browser, and a server. And this is now the structure, the basic, okay? Because it could be nested. So it I know that you are familiar with this format. It is just like actually the object in JavaScript, except for the quotation marks into our key. It is a key value format actually. Except that again in JavaScript we don't have the double quotes here or the quotation into our key or properties. Okay? Then how are we going to convert? Okay, JSON string to object. So we have here an example of a JSON string. We have the name and the age. Okay? So we are going to use the library JSON. Take note, all caps. Then the method parse. So we are going to parse the JSON string so that it is going to return the object. Okay? Now, this object here will remove actually this one here. Okay? It is done with the array format that we have discussed in our previous videos. Okay? So in our example here, it uses the dot notation so that it could display the value for the property name. So we have here object dot name. Okay? And object to JSON. Okay? So you're familiar with this. This is an object. Okay? We have the properties name and age. So we have here the method stringify. Okay? It is going to convert this one here into a JSON string. Okay? This now are a JSON string. Okay? So if you as we go along, I know that you will be um, acquainted. You're going to familiarize then what, when, and how are we going to use these methods with our examples. Okay, so I have created here an example, by the way. So what I did, I have created, okay, for this lecture. So I have created from the sum, since we are going to use a PHP here, so therefore we are going to use Apache server so that we could run our API. Okay, so I have here the folder structure. Okay, I have transferred all the HTML, the CSS, and the JS, and if ever we have images in htdocs. Okay, so I have created a JS lecture folder. Inside the JS lecture, so we have the usual our HTML. The JS, we have the index, and by the way, I put the modules there. Then we have the API. Okay, so all of them belongs to JS lecture folder. Okay, so you have it here. JS lecture, then I have the API. Never mind all of these. Okay, but I'm just going to delete it first. I'm going to create it afterwards. Never mind those two files there. Then I have the index.html, and we're going to have here later on our index.js. Okay, the very first thing that we are going to do, by the way, how are we going to do the connection from our application to the API? So take note here that we have the API or the PHP as an external app from our database. Okay, I was not able to include it here, but we could use actually the fetch library of JavaScript. But in my case, I'm going to introduce to you a third-party library named Axios, AXIOS. Okay, so that we could use the Axios library. So we are going to have the CDN, okay, uh, axios.min.js. Okay, so the library for Axios is or resides in jsdeliver.net, particularly on the content delivery network folder. Okay, so first, before we could use Axios, we are going to initialize it here into our head. Okay, and still we have the module. So this is the only news in our HTML. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create a very simple API, okay, from HTML. Okay, just going to have greetings.php. So there's nothing new here. It's just an ordinary PHP file. So I have here echo, then greetings from API. Okay. Now, if ever I'm going to access that file there. Now, localhost slash JS lecture slash API slash uh, greetings.php. So it is going to display greetings from API. Okay, it's that simple. That would be our output. So how are we going to access uh, that file there and display the greetings? Okay, first into our console. Okay, now, so we have now defined here our API. So next is we are going to have it here into our JavaScript. Okay, so I'm just going to have here a function const get let's say greetings from API. Okay, okay, get greetings from API. But first, okay, so okay, later on. Now, the very first thing that we're going to identify here is that we are going to identify the URL for our API. Now, I'm just going to have it here, const. Um, I'm going to call it base API URL or whatever name that you want. It's equal to HTTP localhost slash JS lecture slash API. Okay, so that's the location actually of the folder API. Okay, and the endpoint, like, no, this is not the endpoint. The endpoint that we are going to have later on is the greetings.api. Okay, so I'm going to have it later on. Okay, so after that, I'm going to have response. Okay, response because we are going to fetch here our API. Okay, so again, by using now the axios library dot get, then the base URL uh, base API URL slash greetings.php. Okay, so it is now on this command, the statement. Okay, it is now the exact time when our app contacts greetings.php or accessed or requested. Okay, from greetings.php. And if ever it is successful, it is going to assign that value into our response object. Take note, this is the request, and we have here the response is returned to our variable response. Okay, so let's say I'm just going to have console.log then response. Okay. By the way, to call that, we have a document that add event listener. Then we have loaded. When the DOM is loaded, then we are going to get greetings from API. Save, then request. Okay. Now, as you could see here, it says promise. Okay. Now, get is actually an asynchronous operation. Okay. So, without now, by the way, as it executes number 5, it is going to call for the external file, okay, which is greetings.php. Take note, it is external. Now, we are expecting for greetings.php to return a response, and that is in the form of a promise. Okay? But our code states that without waiting for the response or for the promise to return, we have immediately displayed it here. Okay? We did not tell the browser to wait for the response and directly displayed it here. So that is why we have here pending promise. Okay? Again, it is an asynchronous operation. So therefore, we must have to issue the command or the keyword await. Okay, so what's the meaning of await? Await means before it is going to proceed to execute the next line or the next code, it must wait first for the return value from this asynchronous operation. Okay? And once the promise is returned, that's only the time that it is going to continue with the next line of code. But we have here an error. It says await are only allowed within asynchronous functions. Okay? So therefore, we must have to make this as an asynchronous function. So we're going to have here the keyword async. So always async await. Okay? So save, just try. Then refresh. So as you can see here, we have here now the response. Okay? Now, our response is composed of different, it is actually, uh, it is, as you could see here, it is now an object. Okay? It has its config, it has its data, headers, and requests, and so on. Okay, what is notable here first is we have the status or the status text. If ever 200, meaning that's no problem or okay. And the data. The data, as you can see here, we have the greetings from API. Okay, so to have some validations here, before we're going to have the response process, so we could validate if response dot status is equal to 200. So meaning no error because 200 has no error. So we are going to res console.log response.data. Else alert mm, error. Okay, let's just add the error. Okay. So what we are expecting now is the data. So what's the data? So we have here greetings from API. So refresh. So we have here greetings from API. Okay. So we have successfully uh, downloaded or extracted, okay, the data from our API. And as you can see here, as I've said, this is a very simple form of API. Okay. Now, how about if ever we are going to send data into our API? So as we have in our discussion a while ago, we have here the different HTTP methods: get, post, put, and delete. Okay, so although in most cases we're just going to have get and post. Okay, so now we are using get. So therefore, to send data to the API, we are going to use some parameters. Okay, wait. Okay, for example, so this is our SIS, and we have here a lot of things or a lot of text here into our URL. So this is actually our parameters. And all of these are sent to wherever URL. Okay, for example, in this case, we are on uh, the main, okay, the main page actually. Then these are the data that has been sent into our that in that URL. Okay, enc is equal to this is now um, encrypted value. So in our case, we are going to send, for example, we're going to have okay, the name, we're going to have our name, then greetings from API. Okay, so first we're going to go to our API. So how are we going to get with PHP the name? Take note, we are going to send the name into our API is equal to, we have the get method. Let us say name. And later on, we're going to have, let us say, hello, name, then greetings from API. Okay, so this is to get the parameter sent from the client. Okay, so from our client then, so we are using here get, okay? Then we have here our URL. Then next is we are going to issue here a parameter, okay? Params, the name, then we're going to have, let us say, okay, Pitok Batulata. Okay, so save. Oops, missing index.js5. So we have a problem here with params. Okay, so we don't have here a comma. Okay, so as you could see there, Pitok Batulata. Okay, so it is possible that the Pitok Batulata would be coming from an input. Okay, let us say, for example, we have here input, then type is equal to text, ID, name. Then here, const name is equal to document dot get element by ID name. And instead of pitok, we're just going to have the name. Okay, don't be confused with the names, name. This name here is okay, so that you are not going to get confused with the variables. I'm just going to have it that way. This name here is actually this name here. Okay? Okay, so let us try. Oh, wait. There must be a button. Okay. Button, ID. Okay, so here from our index, so we're going to get, instead that we're going to have the document, okay? So I'm going to have it here. Uh, button is equal to, let us just call it directly. Document dot get element by ID, then button dash submit, then dot add event listener, then we're going to have click, and we're going to have the fetch. Okay, when the document is loaded, it is going to create an add event listener for the button submit. When it is going to be clicked, it is going to get greetings from API, and it is going to send the name inputted by the user. Okay, so save. Let's try. Okay, we have here Kulas Dimalas. Submit. Oops, we have the problem there. Why? It is because we have submitted the object itself. It should be the value. Save, refresh, Kulas Dimalas. So we have it there now, Kulas Dimalas. So how about for uh, Pablo Baguio? Send. Okay, save there, Pablo Baguio. Okay, so that's how are we going to send and receive data from and to and from our API. Okay, so how about we are going to use a post? Okay, it is because uh, if ever we're going to send some sensitive data, if you're just going to use get, this parameter could be easily intercepted or could be seen actually into into the URL. Okay, so I'm just going to have here number two. Okay, because I'm going to use here a post. Okay, here we use a get. Okay, now to use post. Okay, so same API, so same name, and instead of get, we're going to use uh, post. Okay, so we're going to do it differently, so that is why I'm just going to delete it here. Okay, so first I'm going to declare an object. Okay, new form data. Okay, then form data dot append. Okay, so I'm going to append name, comma, okay, name for the string and the value which is also a string. And the value here is we have ngalan. Okay, so I'm going to send with the form format on a post format. Okay, by using now this form data. So we have here still uh, response is equal to, okay, await axios, okay, then I can have it like this way. First, the URL, okay, the URL. So I'm just going to copy, comma, then I'm going to specify the method. The method here would be post, okay, and the data would be my form data. Okay, so this is now the difference between the get by just assuming there a parameter. By actually, if ever you have some more parameters, you can just have a comma, then add more parameters. Here, just another append. Okay, let us say you have an address, so just append address and so on. Okay, so here we are sending the form data. But how are we going to intercept or get it from here? So instead of get, we are going to use the super global post. Okay, so basically, actually, we could have the same result as of now. Pitok, then submit. Oops, we have an error. By the way, we have array key name. Name. Okay, so you have a problem there with the name. colon. Okay. Actually, we have no problem there. Okay, let us correct. We have the name. Oh, I'm still calling the get. Okay, it should be API 2. Okay, so let's try it first. You talk, submit, save it there now. Okay, it gives us an error. It is because we used get. I called the get, but we are now on the post. Okay, so that is why we have an error. Okay, so that's how are we going to call um, either get or post. Okay. Now we also have last topic is we have how are you to convert JSON string to object and object to JSON string. We are going to have it. Um, okay, first here, let us say uh, const. Let us say let's say programming skill. Okay, skill is equal to language JavaScript. Then let us say level, which is beginner 3. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to send also uh, let us say the skill and the skill there. Save. Okay. So I'm going to get, so here I get the name, and next I'm going to get also the skill. Okay, I'm just going to have first if there's no error. Okay, we have no error. So no problem with that. Okay, but then I want to get the skill name. Is it the name? Oh no, skill language and the level. Okay, so how are we going to get the skill name and no the language and the level? Okay, so in that case, so take note here that this is now in a JSON string. Okay, we are going to convert this one into a JSON. So first, actually, I can have it here. Okay, JSON dot stringify. Okay, I have converted this one here into a JSON. And actually, there's no error as of now yet, maybe. Okay, because we have not used yet uh, this one here. Okay, so how am I going to get now the skill? Okay, um, your programming language is, then I'm going to have, let us say, language and level is equal to, okay. So normally I'm just going to have it in PHP, we're just going to have the language. And here I'm going to have skill, then the level. Okay. Where does the language and level came from? It is actually from here, the language and the level. And we have submitted it there. Okay, let's try. Your programming language is language. Okay, let's try. Okay, we have it there. Cannot access offset of type string on string blah blah blah, but actually there is a problem on number 6. Line number 6, we have it here. Okay? We are not getting now the language properly. Why? It is because when we receive it here, okay, it is on a string. Okay, it is a string. So therefore, what are we going to do now? Is we are going to convert this one here into an array. Okay, so I'm just going to skill array. I'm just going to be that way. Okay, then here in PHP, we have JSON encode. No, 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 no. Decode. Okay? Meaning, we are going to convert from the JSON string, we are going to convert it into an array. Okay? Then, we're going to have it here, true. Okay? An associative array of variables. We set it to true so that we could use in because when we are going to access an element of an array, we're just going to use the index. Okay? But I want so that for readability purposes, we are going to use we are going to treat it as an associative array. So that is why I set here as true so that I could use here language. Okay? So skills array. Okay, I'll try. Click level. Wait. We have a problem number 7. So we have their level. Oh, it's the spelling. Okay, I'm just going to add it here of level, then level. Save, refresh, Kulas. Submit. Okay, save it there. Hello, Kulas. Your programming language is JavaScript of level 3. Okay. And by the way, if later on we're just going to have, if ever it is possible that you are going to, okay, let us say, I'm just going to say return value is equal to array, uh, okay, name, dollar name, then language, and level. Okay, so, oops. What I'm doing here is I'm going to return a value, an array, okay, based on those values that we have here. Okay? Now, if ever I'm going to have echo, then the returned value, okay, submit array to string conversion an error on line number 13. Okay? So, again, array to string. Why? Because return value here is an array. So how are we going to convert this array into a JSON string? So we're just going to have JSON encode, then we have it that way. Okay? And here, since the response.data is now, okay, anyway, I'm just displaying it here, so therefore we are safe. Okay, so save, refresh, then pitok, submit. So you could see here, it returns. By the way, Axios, it returns here a JSON string, but the data has been automatically transferred or converted into an object. Okay, so as you can see here, it is an array. Okay, so how are you going to display separately the name and so on? So let us say const response. Okay, this is just the long method. Okay, so I'm just going to have let's say student because the data sent back here is we have student. So we have student dot name. So why name? It is because as you can see, we have the name, language, and the level. The key. We have the three keys here. Okay, so you have there student dot name dot language and dot level. Save. Okay, try. Pitok Batulata, submit, save it there. Okay, the name, the language, and the level. Okay, so hopefully you have fully understood how are we going to communicate with our API so that on our next video, we are then going to communicate from the client to the API to the database and return. Okay, so that's the end of our video.